JD is here to answer questions, so we don't have anything to announce or anything planned. So just go ahead and raise your hands. We'll take a few questions here. Levi?
General question. What has been your kind of assessment of the team over the last, I mean, it hasn't been good over the last week, but kind of what are you seeing? Is it different from earlier in the season? Is it basically the same, just a bad run?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we came out of the break, and it's only been a week, or not even a week, but it's been, ugly couple of series. We've been outplayed pretty much across the board. We had the stretch there in May into early June where our record was poor. We struggled. I think the big difference there is we were in just about every game. There was I felt a higher level of kind of competitiveness, a better energy to the club, and I don't want to make more of it than it is, considering it has only been the 5 games here against Toronto and Detroit. But it's been something that we've got to correct and correct pretty quick here. That's the style of play here has not been acceptable.
You see that you can point to as a cause for this, or is this just a stretch that teams go through?
I mean, listen, it's really been up and down, the roster. Been a few players that seem to be playing with a greater sense of urgency or an energy level. I'm hopeful that we pull out of it here today and start playing better through the weekend, and we can look back at it as a rough 5-game stretch rather than something more concerning than that.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris.
Hey, John, have you guys reached a point where you might want to start getting some looks at some guys maybe in AAA, like a guy like a Curtis Terry or something like that? Or, is the leash getting shorter for some guys in the big leagues right now, especially for guys who maybe aren't under contract past this year?
Yeah, I think really good question, Chris. The answer on the first part, as far as guys that are have really earned looks and are kind of knocking the door down, so to speak, from the system, absolutely. It's an active conversation, and we do want to reward those guys, and we'll be looking to do so here over the course of the next potentially few days, and certainly as we head towards the end of the month and into the beginning of August. Trying to balance that also with what may or may not happen here as we head towards the trade deadline, and just try to line things up. So, but yes, there are some players at Round Rock, a couple guys at Frisco, quite frankly, that are deserving of if they're in Frisco, potentially a promotion here soon, or at Round Rock, an opportunity to come up and compete.
Just a little over a week until the trade deadline. Just as you guys prepare for that, how much activity do you guys intend to? How much activity do you foresee the Rangers going through, or just throughout the next week or so?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of conversation, where that leads and how much activity, to use your term, like whether we. How many deals we actually get to the goal line on, it's hard to say. We've had kind of the types of conversations that you would expect a team in our position, the standings, to have with getting called on players that can help a contender, especially with guys right at the end of their contracts. And then we're having some different types of conversations too, more baseball type deals that just players that interest us that we could set ourselves up, do some of our off-season work right now. So hard to handicap right now. I mean, I would think some of the, like I said, the traditional deals you would see somebody in our point in the standings make. I think those will happen, but hard to put a timeline on it.
Thanks, JD.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff?
Seven of the top 10 picks have signed. remain unsigned. Is there any progress toward deals with those three?
Kind of at different points. I'm optimistic that we'll, ultimately reach agreements with all those guys, but kind of a little bit different process involved in each one. So I don't have any. I don't want to get into specifics on any of them, other than I'm optimistic that we will reach agreements with all of them at the appropriate time.
Did you guys ever make any contact with Will Taylor, the 19th round pick quarterback?
Yeah, we did. We've had some contact with him and his family. Have really hold them in really high regard. Very impressed by Will and our pre-draft interaction, and his family as well. It's an impressive group. We talked with his agent some. I at this point it seems unlikely given his opportunity at Clemson and what he wants to do. So that's barring something significant changing, it's unlikely to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Evan.
So would you term what you are doing is pursuing deals, or are you simply accepting calls?
So, you can look up my answer from the last 15 years on that. I think it's like semantics. It doesn't matter. Like every team is doing the same thing. We're all taking calls and we're all making calls. It's that time of year.
Okay. When you talk about players who are in active conversations, John, how active are active conversations regarding starting pitchers that you would potentially bring up, or is that an area that maybe a little bit farther off?
I don't. Sorry, regarding which starting pitchers?
The possibility of bringing up starting pitchers from the minor league system, is that a little bit farther off than some of the position players?
It kind of depends on who you're talking about. I mean, listen, when we had the doubleheader this weekend, we had some discussion about bringing guys up for a spot start there. So we have some guys that are causing us to have those conversations based on their performance and the improvements that they're making. But barring a need in the big leagues, an injury or a trade at this point, I don't think that'll happen this month.
And then last thing, can you say one way or another, and I know what your track record is, but can you say one way or another whether you will categorically make a contract extension offer to Joey Gallo before the trade deadline?
I'd rather handle those conversations privately at this point.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Emily.
Kind of piggybacking off what Evan asked and realizing you might shut me down, and that's fine. But do you feel like this is, one of the bigger decisions that you're going to have to make? Just considering the roster that currently exists, the way the organization is built and structured right now, and how big of a part of it Joey is, not just from an organizational standpoint, but also from a fan base standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big decision for us. For those of us that, and when I say us, I mean on both sides of the Zoom call that have been around, for a number of years. We've seen Joey's growth. He's as a player, whether it's kind of moving positions and settling in as one of the top defenders in the game out there, or just as just watching him kind of grow and mature into the person he is now. And it's been a fun process. He's been a productive big leaguer. I think he's still scratching the surface of what he's capable of. There's been some different reasons along the way, injuries and some other things that have kind of it hasn't been the most kind of linear progression. That kind of all draw up on it when you're imagining a player's development and progress. But regardless, he's a fan favorite. He's very productive. He's expressed a desire to be here, and all those things, carry real weight with us.
Analytics perspective, obviously you can't measure that, the fan aspect of it. And if you're just looking at baseball and winning games and what you can do to better the organization from strictly a baseball standpoint, how do you factor in also that need for the fan base to have a building piece, and one that is, kind of a cornerstone and recognizable and familiar, considering the moves that you've made the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I do think it's important. I think going back to when, 06, 07, 08, I think the value that, Michael's a very different person, from where he was in his life than Joey. That's not a fair comparison, but I'm talking about from a fan standpoint. I do think there's real value in that continuity and that, kind of a successful veteran, young veteran player to help younger players, assimilate and come up and be part of it. So that's absolutely a factor. I think the flip side is, we ultimately have to make decisions based on what we think is going to, get us to competing for world championships most quickly and with the most sustainability, and so, and that could go either way. So, we haven't made those decisions yet. We've had some, for open conversations with Joey. I feel good about where the communication is there and the relationship is there. Beyond that, I'd rather handle it, privately.
Thanks, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
John Radigan.
JD, obviously, young managers like Chris Woodward go through so many different things, but this one right now that he's going through is somewhat historic. So not only, does it impact and affect the players, but obviously him too. How do you feel Woody has done, in trying to, put a Band-Aid on this little downturn that's happened since the All-Star break?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him for a while this morning. We've talked a few times here this week and over the break, and as he, CY, and myself are in regular conversation. And on one hand, I feel for him that we haven't provided him with, quite frankly, with kind of more talent that to help him as he's working on the culture and our style of play and developing our players. I like that he's. You've seen it, I think, a little bit in the postgame. You guys know Woody. He's one of the most positive people you're going to meet. But he's shown his frustration, if that's the right word. I mean, he's communicated to the players. One of the things I really admire about Woody is he doesn't communicate through the media. So anything he's saying to you guys on camera or in discussions, he's either saying or will say to the players and then some. I mean, I think he's laying out pretty clear expectations and both encouraging and challenging the group. And we still have 60 or so games to go. There's a lot that we can accomplish, and I think, quite frankly, I think there's a lot of our decisions this offseason will be impacted by the direction that we see the club and some individual players take over the next few months.
When you have a run like most of us agree, I think that the culture that you mentioned, the culture has been implemented, right? We see it fairly consistently throughout, the players' approaches and things like that. Does a stretch like this undercut that at all, or do you feel like that culture that he is trying to establish is still in place and everything's, pretty good there?
Well, in an ideal world, you see it strengthened through this, right? You see guys challenged and both individually and all of us. When I say guy, I mean including myself, including CY, including Woody. I mean this is something we all share in. But the adversity and how we handle it and the decisions we make, how we go about our work, our consistency, but also, understand that there is a process, and I think that kind of word gets overused sometimes. But there needs to be a sense of urgency as well, and there needs to be a responsibility to each other to pick it up a little bit. And so again, I don't want to overdo what it's been 5 games. They've been 5 very rough games to watch from a fan standpoint. I get it. We all feel the same way, but I think we want to make sure that 5 games doesn't become 10 or 3 weeks, etc.
JD.
Okay, we got a few follow-ups. We'll go to Jeff.
Yeah, on the injury front, what's Kyle Cody's status?
Sure. I'll run through a few players here. Kyle had a little bit of a setback a couple weeks ago. Nothing structural, but he had some soreness, so we gave him about a week off, and he's in the process of kind of ramping back up. He's got a chance to pitch for us if things go well in September. Ari Hara is a little bit ahead of schedule. Could be out on a rehab kind of as soon as late August, but if not early September. He's got a chance to pitch in September as well. And he's feeling really good. That's a real positive one. John King, he's on his throwing program. We're kind of building him up. Could be off a mound as soon as this weekend, and based on how that goes, we'll have kind of lay out a plan for him. But his strength has returned, and he's feeling good. Joe Palumbo, with the issues he's had with his back, I don't think he's going to return to pitch this summer. It's going to be more of an off-season program to get him built up, whether that's winter ball or somewhere else instructionally. We haven't laid that out yet. Willie Calhoun's doing well. We've kind of got him on the same program that Chu was on from a timeline standpoint when he had a similar injury. We haven't put Willie on the 60-day IL because we think there's a real chance he'll beat that back. So we're hoping that he has a good week and has a chance to start swinging a bat and hitting. Next week would be optimistic, but that's not out of the realm of possibility. And then Jose Trevino doing really well. He should be ready, potentially as soon as this weekend.
Okay. How does Ari Hara? I know he's under contract for next year. How does he figure into the plans? You guys barely have a look at him.
Yeah, outside of the first few starts, in hindsight, I think that this issue that he had was probably affecting him, earlier than maybe we realized. After that one, really good start against the Angels, kind of, in hindsight, it looks like he was starting to suffer for some of these symptoms afterwards, and wasn't until that one in Chicago and that cold day that it really we really kind of got our arms around it. So. But yeah, look at him similar as we did this winter. I think he's a guy that can pitch in a major league rotation, health provided.
And will Cody need instructs or winter ball also?
I think so. Yeah, we're gonna need to find a way to give him some innings.
All right, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Evan.
So you've touched on this, and I think you just referenced it too with the 60 games that are remaining, right? This year was about finding answers about who fit the long-term vision and maybe who didn't fit the long-term vision. And on that level, you're talking about a lot of growth that can happen after this painful time over the last few months. Do you have to play that out with all these young guys, or do you start to pull the plug on some of these guys who aren't performing that are young guys and replace them with other young guys?
It kind of depends on the individual, but both are possible. I think that I do see real value in having guys go wire to wire and kind of learning how to finish the season and get through some of the challenges they're having here or that they may have in August, but to be able to finish the year, as long as it's not a health concern, especially with a pitcher. And then on the flip side, I think there are some players that we still believe in that might need a break, might need to step out of the major league environment where it's compete every night and sending guys down to go work on some things is on the table as well. So it kind of depends on the individual we're talking about, but both are being discussed. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got time for one or two more. Levi.
So I know that you're not a coach or a player, but I might ask you to play a little bit of talent evaluator here. because when I hear you talk about, you know, what you're looking for from the team, and I've heard Chris Woodward use the term fight. I need to see some more fight, or, you know, competitive fire. When you're watching a game, is there anything specific that you look for that sort of dictates, like, yes, that's good, that's fight, or no, that's not it? I don't know, the things that fans can see, like, you know, it looks like a guy's taking it easy or whatever, but I feel like it's not that. I feel like it's not that. Is that a fair question?
Yeah, it is, and I think I think we as fans, you know, especially you put you think about your favorite team in another sport. There's always that sense of like, you know, I feel like these guys aren't trying, right? When things are going poorly, especially hitting wise, that's like when a team looks the flattest, when there's just no, you don't have a consistent pressure on and runners on and things like that, and you know. I think we all know that's not the case. That these guys take a lot of pride in what they do. They're working very hard. They want to succeed. So I don't question the work. I think if we did have questions on a guy's desire or work, he wouldn't be here. I mean that's kind of a non-negotiable baseline to earn the opportunity. I think the biggest thing that I want to see and we want to see is gradual improvements. We want to see guys making adjustments, and that's different for everybody. But when, if a pitcher, gets beat in the same, making the same mistake a number of times in a row, or, a defender's out of position, a number of times in a row, or, a hitter, isn't necessarily recognizing how they're being pitched and making an adjustment to even if the result isn't wildly different, we want to see that, that attempt to improve and to try something different rather than just being stubborn and constantly going down the same way. So that's probably the biggest thing that I'm looking for right now, on top of the, that kind of, desire, energy level, or kind of some of the things that Woody's touched on.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to let JD go. Thanks, everybody. The Woody's Zoom.